Hi, I'm Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Tonight, I'm going to jump into talking some rankings, at least some of the players I'm higher or lower versus the expert consensus at Fantasy Pros. Now, every week I submit rankings to Fantasy Pros, and in particular for week 5, I have been hot. I'm coming off of a week where I finished 11th overall out of over 200 rankers. Right now, I am 17th year to date in accuracy among over 200 rankers. And I'm 17th among running backs and 21st among wide receiver rankers. It's been pretty good. I've had 2 top 15 weeks so far of the first 4, and all of my weeks have finished in the top 100. So I want to just say my rankings have been pretty good, and you should check them out at the bottom of the article that I'm going to post here in the comments. But also, these are behind the paywall. So if you're like, Bradley, I need a subscription, I need to see what you have to say about these players, I'm going to go into a little bit about these players in this live stream. But if you need a subscription to fantasy data, which you should get, it provides a ton of not just counting data like snaps and yards and points, but also some of the efficiency and advanced metrics data that helps me make micro and macro decisions for my rankings and also for DFS plays, optimizers. It has a lot of awesome tools on it. So use the promo code FFF20 for a 20% off your subscription. That will get you access to fancy data, all of the data, plus access to these premium subscription articles. All right, let's jump into it. The first player that I want to highlight in my rankings versus expert consensus is Jacoby Brissett. Right now in the Fantasy Pros expert consensus, he's quarterback 22. I have him at quarterback 16. And I must admit, this is not a pick that I thought I would make 4 or 5 weeks into the season or that I would have made 2 months ago. Jacoby Brissett looks like a different quarterback than he did back in 2017 and 2019 when he was the starter for Indianapolis. In fact, if you look at PFF's passer grade for Brissett in those 2 seasons where he was the starter for the Colts, 62.6 and 58. Those were among the league's worst. Okay. But now here in 2022, his 72.6 PFF pass grade is 7th among quarterbacks so far. And that's among quarterbacks with at least 140 dropbacks. He's 11th among quarterbacks in average depth of target. He's not just dinking and dunking it to Kareem Hunt or in David Njoku. He's looking down the field. And he's 12th in completion percentage, so he's making the most of the passes he is throwing. Brissett also is taking the second fewest sacks and has the 8th most rushing yards amongst quarterback. And that's pointing to his mobility. He's not losing downs. He's not turning the ball over very often. He's being efficient. He's throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. And he's also more aware in the pocket than a lot of other passers. He's been everything the Browns have been hoping for while weathering this Deshaun Watson suspension. And he faces the LA Chargers, who just lost Joey Bosa for 8 to 10 weeks for a groin injury, pretty much the half of the season. And the Chargers have given up the 4th most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. And with Amari Cooper and David Njoku full go, along with Nick Chubb keeping the Chargers defense honest, this is a ceiling game for Jacoby Brissett. Mid to high-end quarterback 2 this week. So he's a possible streaming option in deeper leagues. His ceiling can be achieved this Sunday against the Chargers. You think that Herbert's going to be pushing the ball down the field. Justin Herbert, throwing for 275 yards in pretty much every game. He's averaging over 300 passing yards per game. So this might be one of those games where Jacoby Brissett is going to achieve the ceiling. I want to be higher than my peers on Jacoby Brissett. His consensus, as I said, is 22. I have him at 16. One start sit question so far. Do I trade Jamar for Mike Evans and Josh Jacobs? I already have Godwin. I think this week 5, if you can get it done in week 5, Jamar Chase is primed for a breakout. I we'll talk about this on my top prop fantasy article that's going to drop here anytime this evening. But on my top prop fantasy article, I mentioned that Joe Burrow is primed for a breakout, and so is Jamar Chase. Mike Evans now is going to be sharing with Chris Godwin. We know Evans is a touchdown machine. So I'm worried that you're going to give up this elite production. Depending upon who your running back is, I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to be that upgrade for you. He's been a solid running back 2 so far, but as a running back 1, I think you can look elsewhere. Like Josh Jacobs could be replaceable down the stretch. He has had durability issues. He's been getting a lot of the carries and a lot of the work. So if you really need the depth, I think that that's a fine trade. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to hate it. But I'm not trading for Mike Evans just so that I can have the stack. I'm not going to steer clear of it either. I think that that's going to be fine. The Atlanta matchup this week is on the short term a very nice one. So it depends on your team need. I don't hate it. I don't think it's out of the range of possibilities for this particular trade. But it really depends on the team need. This is one that I would be fine with if you accepted. We're going to jump into my next quarterback ranking, and that is for Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's consensus ranking is quarterback 8, and not much has looked good for the Arizona Cardinals offense outside of Kyler. He's had 3 top 10 quarterback weeks, but he's had 1 contest outside of the top 20. He faces the Philadelphia Eagles this week that have only allowed 9.9 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. And you're thinking, well, these are quarterbacks: Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence. Those aren't great competition. Actually, they're pretty decent. On average, those 4 quarterbacks, the quarterback 13, averaging 18.5 fantasy points per game. If you take out the games that those 4 players played against the Eagles, they're averaging 21.3 fantasy points per game. That's like top 6. So yes, those have actually been players who have been crushing outside of the Eagles game. They've been getting more than 2x their fantasy points. The Philadelphia Eagles have limited those 4 quarterbacks to 9.9 fantasy points per game. Arizona has a negative 22% pass grade advantage per PFF. That means it's a disadvantage. They're at a 22% disadvantage. And the Eagles only allow 14 rush yards per game to quarterbacks this season. Yes, we know Kyler hasn't been running as much as we'd like, but there's not reason for him to right now, and there's not a lot of upside for him. Yes, Kyler Murray can elevate with his legs, and we've seen a couple 300 passing yard games from him. But that may not be enough to get Kyler Murray into that top 10, much less be, a top 12 quarterback. He's a fade for me. If you have, a Tom Brady, this is a week for a Tom Brady breakout. I would start Brady over Kyler Murray 100%. There are other quarterbacks you should be starting ahead of Kyler Murray too. It's a dicey week. This is a tough matchup. I know that the over under for this game is one of the highest in the NFL, but Kyler Murray could get off to that slow start, and then the Eagles just squeeze him. They just focus on Kyler. So I am concerned about Kyler Murray achieving a ceiling this week. I am lower than my peers on this. What's up, homie? What do you think of Mike Davis likely taking the Justice Hill role in Baltimore? Would you start him over, this is Samaje Perine, or Justin Jackson in super deep leagues? Oh, Mike, I feel bad for you that you have to insert Mike Davis into your starting lineup, but that's what you would have to do. Mike Davis is not Justice Hill. Justice Hill has been crushing it so far this year, 6.6 yards per carry, but it's the role. It's the 6 to 8 carries. I don't think Samaje Perine is probably the closest you're going to get to that. Justin Jackson, it was not garbage time, but it was like a fluky thing that Justin Jackson gets into there. I would begrudgingly put Mike Davis into the lineup. Maybe it's Samaje Perine, but yeah, gross. It's gross. Sorry, Mike. This is not a fun question. I get it. That's super deep, but yeah, I think it's going to be J.K. Dobbins carrying a significant role for Baltimore. Joe Mixon obviously carrying a super large role. Preseason, I was more into Chris Evans. He was a better PFF graded receiving back, better pass blocking back than Samaje Perine. So I guess it's just that Cincinnati likes Perine more as from a coaching perspective, but it's not Justin Jackson. Samaje Perine maybe, but Mike Davis is most likely going to be the change of pace back for the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, when you lose Javonte Williams in the 32 team league, that leaves a gaping hole for you. Maybe for these types of things in a 32 team league, if it's a dynasty league, I don't know if it's dynasty. If it's redraft, you're kind of screwed. But in dynasty, like Javonte's really valuable, and I wonder if you could trade him to a rebuilding team where you still get something really, really valuable. I don't have a player in mind per se, but I'm sure that someone would get, Josh Jacobs plus should probably get you Javonte trade off. Yeah, considering DJ Dallas if Walker sits. It feels gross. I feel sorry for you, Mike. Redraft. Yeah, once Javante's gone, you're in zero territory. You're just scraping it at the bottom of the barrel. I'm sorry, Mike. Probably lean Mike Davis, but I wouldn't blame you if you went Samaje Perine either. We're going to jump into my higher ranked running back this week, and that is running back Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook may still be dealing with this shoulder injury, and he'll probably be dealing with it not only the rest of the season, but the rest of his career. But he's got one of the best matchups this week against the Chicago Bears. PFF grades Minnesota at a 34% run block advantage over Chicago. And the Bears are giving up the 8th most fantasy points to running back so far this season, and that's including a 30-point game and half PPR, a 30-point game to Aaron Jones, a 17-point game to Dameon Pierce, and another 17-point game to Saquon Barkley. Even Elijah Mitchell was 6 for 41 against the Bears before leaving due to a first-half knee injury. Cook was unlucky in London when Alexander Mattison scored the touchdown, but he carried the ball 20 times. That was a season high. He played a season high 75% of snaps. He ran 19 routes. This is elite running back one usage. And with Jonathan Taylor out week 5, this is a positive matchup. Dalvin Cook, it shouldn't be super bold, but Dalvin Cook, my running back one here in week 5. My lower ranked running back for week 5, Ezekiel Elliott. Now, for Zeke, it's long gone are the days of 18 rushes for 100 yards. At least for this week against the Rams, that's also going to be the case. Now, if you look at week 6 and on, the rush defenses seem to be a little softer, so maybe this is an extremely trade low for Ezekiel Elliott sort of situation. But he's coming off a 19 rush for 49 yards against Washington. Now, on a positive note, Zeke, this is the first time he's handled 20 or more touches all season. But he is ridiculously inefficient. He's plotting between the tackles. He's the 9th lowest juke rate among running backs. He has the 3rd lowest yards created per attempt rate in the league. And this is the toughest matchup on the slate for running backs. The Rams allow the fewest running back fantasy points on the season. They've only allowed 1 total touchdown in 4 games. If we look at the 4 starters against the Rams this season. Devin Singletary went 8 rushes for 48 yards week 1. He finished as the running back 39. Atlanta's Cordarrelle Patterson went 10 for 41, finished as running back 51. James Conner went 13 for 39 on the ground, finished as running back 35. And Jeff Wilson went 18 for 74, and he had the touchdown. He was the one running back in 4 weeks to score the touchdown, still only finished as running back 17. Zeke has a really low floor and a very limited ceiling this week. He's my running back 39 for week, 39, running back 38 because of injury. I've had to bump him up just a tad, but I had him running back 39 on Friday. I had to bump him up just a little bit, but running back 38 now in my Fantasy Pros rankings. Okay, don't know why there isn't an option to hit the like button. Doesn't let you subscribe either. That's bizarre. I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, I don't know why they hit the like option. Let me see if I can make some adjustments here on the YouTube. We'll see if we can get that squared away real quick. In the meantime, yeah, you can use the promo code FFF20 for a 20% off your subscription to get the article, access to the article, but also access to all of the fantasy data, the good stuff, not only the counting stats, but also the advanced metrics, the efficiency metrics. It sends straight to the live chat. Let's see if I can make some updates here. Nope, it looks like I'm all set. I don't know. Let me see if I can get you the channel link here, Mike. Control C. Okay, I'll put it in the chat here. Boom. All right, cool. Hopefully that link helps you out. In the meantime, let's move on. I'll monitor the chat here in a moment. Let's move on to my higher ranked wide receiver for the week. My higher ranked wide receiver for week 5 is AJ Brown. And if you can tell right behind me, right there, AJ Brown signed jersey from Ole Miss. Big AJ Brown fan, but this is the week. This is the week. If there's a lurking spike week in the works for AJ Brown, it's week 5. The Arizona Cardinals have 2, not just 1, but 2 cornerbacks in the bottom 11 of PFF coverage grade, projecting to line up across from Brown for the majority of his snaps. But that's not all. Brown has been crushing this year, absolutely dominating. He's second among wide receivers with a 3.39 yards per route run, third among receivers in contested catches, third among wide receivers in receiving yards, and he's commanding a 32.2% target share. All of this are nice. Those are nice metrics, but the passing volume for the Eagles is significantly higher than last year. They're actually passing over expectation. It might be, it's not at the 45% rate that they were last year. So AJ Brown is legitimately getting not just rate volume, but actual pass and receiving volume. Brown has historically hit these elite marks. When he hits, he booms. And he has 9 of his 47 games finishing as wide receiver 6 or better. 9 of 47. We're talking 20% of the time he hits not just like back end wide receiver 1, but the most elite of ceilings. And this is the matchup. This is the highest over under of the game of the week. And the Eagles are favored, and it's a positive matchup against these cornerbacks. AJ Brown is a dude. Bet on the talent. Wide receiver 8 is too low. It's hedging that things are going to go the wrong way. AJ Brown's a stud. He's my bold call wide receiver 1 overall this week. And it's because of matchup over under, the boom history, and the little bit of bias that I have in favor of AJ Brown. My lower ranked wide receiver for week 5, Brandon Cooks. Now, the Houston Texans are the only winless team going into week 5. Their struggles directly relate to how ineffective Davis Mills has been at getting Brandon Cooks the ball consistently. Like week 4, Brandon Cooks had a good game. And overall in the season, a 26.1% target share is nothing to scoff at. That's pretty decent. He's leading the Houston Texans in target share, but only has 215 receiving yards through 4 games. For perspective, like Tyreek Hill had 160 receiving yards in 1 game. So Cooks has not paid off his 5th, 6th round ADPs from this offseason. He's finished as a wide receiver 2 twice, but he's finished outside the top 48 of wide receivers in his other 2 games. Fantasy managers, we've been waiting for this breakout, right? We've been told Brandon Cooks was a great value. He's underrated. He's undervalued. He's mispriced, blah, blah, blah. But it looks like we're going to have to wait another week. The Jaguars allowed the 5th fewest receptions per game to wide receivers, and Cooks is projected to line up against Shaq Griffin, who is one of the better graded coverage cornerbacks. I've moved down Brandon Cooks from wide receiver 22 to wide receiver 35. And you're thinking, that feels like it's a lot. But really, it's moving him down like 1 or 2 tiers. That like wide receiver, mid wide receiver 2 to wide receiver, beginning of wide receiver 4 territory, they're only separated by a couple fantasy points. But like the upside for Brandon Cooks is severely limited in this matchup. I think the Jaguars, it will take control of this game. Their defense has played really well. And in particular, the Shaq Griffin matchup, I think will limit Brandon Cooks' ceiling. So for those reasons, I'm lowering expectations for Brandon Cooks for week 5. The tight end I'm higher on for week 5, David Njoku. Oh, I keep putting Njoku in my lineup and he keeps producing. He's been playing at an elite tight end level the last couple weeks, but it's the underlying route metrics earlier in the season that should have been an indicator to you that the breakout was imminent. Njoku gets this juicy matchup against Kenneth Murray from the LA Chargers, and he's super cheap to stack with Brissett. Like, Njoku is tight end 7 in target share, 4th in red zone targets. He's playing 91% of the snaps. Yes, there's Harrison Bryant, who's also like running routes as well and getting snaps, but Njoku is out on the field almost every play. It's clear there's chemistry between Njoku and Brissett. He's trusted, but he's more athletic than the previous back-end tight end 1 that Brissett was throwing to in Indianapolis, and that was Jack Doyle. If you remember, Jack Doyle was a back-end tight end 1 in his time in Indianapolis with Brissett due to the high tight end target share. And that's what we're seeing again this year is a high target share from Brissett to Njoku. And that's why like the floor is tight end 12. Like my peers are ranking him at his absolute floor. Whereas I want kind of a ceiling game from him. He's got a good matchup. He's been getting target share. He's running the routes, all of these things. And with Kyle Pitts out as well this week, and who's the other tight end that's out there's another Dawson Knox is out as well this week. David Njoku needs to be bumped up your rankings. You want to be starting him with confidence. He's a start in 1 tight end leagues. Okay. He's my tight end 6 this week. He's the consensus tight end 12. He's a confident start. Plug in David Njoku into your lineups. The last player I want to mention on today's live stream is Zach Ertz. He's consensus tight end 6. So my peers think he's going to do really well against the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think we need to temper expectations. He's tight end 12 for me right now. And while fantasy managers may see this as a revenge game narrative, Ertz is not poised for that big of a game. And he's played well so far. But AJ Green is back. Rondell Moore is back. Yes, Ertz may lead tight ends in red zone and end zone targets, but those are surely to decrease with AJ Green, the big bodied AJ Green, and the sneaky Rondell Moore. And Moore plays primarily in the slot, and it's not like Ertz is out there running or pass blocking, right? He's one of the worst pass blockers among tight ends. He runs routes out of the slot, but the problem is Rondell Moore is back, right? We've got Marquise Brown, we've got AJ Green, Rondell Moore, Zach Ertz, but also there's a sprinkling of other wide receivers that'll get, looks as well. So I am concerned about Ertz now that other pieces of this starting core are back. And he has a tough matchup too this week. If he's going to be running routes, he's going to be doing so against linebacker TJ Edwards, who's only allowed 51 total receiving yards on the 15 times he's been targeted against. He also has the third best PFF coverage grade among linebackers with 100 or more coverage snaps. So this is a tough matchup for Ertz. He's not going to find a lot of room. He's not going to be given a lot of receptions, by the defense. So it's going to have to come from volume. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm concerned about Kyler Murray and the overall offense trying to score points. So I think Zach Ertz is still probably cracking your tight end starting lineup, but you need to lower expectations. It's a tough matchup for him. Even in a half PPR format, it may not be enough to salvage the day. He's my tight end 12. I know in my article it says tight end 13, but with Kyle Pitts out and Dawson Knox, I did have to move up Ertz. So at tight end 6 consensus, the reality is he's a fade for me this week. You need to lower expectations for Zach Ertz. Well, thank you for everyone for jumping in. Once again, my name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. You can check out the article that I have from Fantasy Data. You can use the promo code FFF20 for a 20% off your Fantasy Data subscription. And that will get you access to the data that I use to make decisions, that the fantasy footballers use to make decisions, JJ Zacharyson, and a lot of other fantasy analysts in this industry. Matthew Berry even uses fantasy data. We just saw a message from him that he wanted to update his subscription. So Matthew Berry even uses fantasy data. You should too. It helps you be one of the best, help me and others make some of the best rankings in the industry. So really appreciate you checking it out. And until next time, good luck in week 5 and good luck in the fantasy football streets, everyone.